Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. If this is your first time here, my name is Angel, and today we're going to be doing a little something different on this video. We're actually going to be doing the easiest, quickest spring painting. It is so quick, so easy to do. Everyone can do this. You definitely cannot mess this up, and I really hope you all enjoy this, and I hope you will give it a try. So for this painting, I grabbed a 16 by 20 canvas from Walmart. I actually got these in a pack of 5 of them for around $12, I think. So I just grabbed one of those. You can definitely use whatever size canvas you want for this. Then I'm just going to prime my canvas with some regular white acrylic paint. And if you don't know this, these little ketchup and mustard bottles from Dollar Tree are great to store your paint in. That way you can just squeeze out a little bit and not have to worry about having a big one if you have a big one. But I'm just taking a large paintbrush. I squirted some of my white acrylic paint all over this canvas, and I'm just gonna rub that all over the canvas, let it dry completely, and then I painted over it with just some regular black acrylic paint. And again, you're gonna let that completely dry. And here I'm kind of showing you, I'm leaning into the video to try to show you where the light is coming from, because that is something that you need to figure out before you start this painting, is where you want your light to come from. If you would imagine a window either in the right or left corner. But as I was leaning in, you can kind of see the sunlight already, and I'm just gonna follow kind of that pattern. So all I did was wet my paintbrush, and then I'm gonna mix up some brown paint. I also have some cream paint there, and the method that I'm using is wet acrylic. So basically this whole entire time we're gonna keep the paintbrush wet so that you can blend more easily, and you really can't mess this up because you can just keep blending colors until you're happy with them. But right now I've decided that I'm going to have some light coming from that right hand side downward, and that is going to be my light area, and I'm going to keep a lot of that dark area. And right now I'm just going in with water and paint, and I'm blending my colors to try to get that light as if, like I said, there was a window over there or some sort of light source, and I'm going to paint downward at an angle. And once I have a lot of the light on there, then I'll go back in with some of that black paint, again keeping my brush wet, and I'm going to blend that all into my canvas. Now, like I said, since we are doing a wet acrylic painting, you can just keep blending this until you are completely happy with it and everything is nice and smoothly blended in. And you'll see right here as I'm painting, I keep switching back and forth between the dark colors and the light colors, and I'm just dipping my brush into that water. I'm not cleaning my brush at all or anything like that. I'm just blending this all in. And once I'm happy with it, I'll set this aside and let it dry for just a little while. Now moving on to the next step, I'm just going to add in a little bit of white paint to my palette. So I have black, brown, a light tan color, and now I have some white paint. Again, I'm going to be keeping this brush wet, and I'm going to mix up a little bit of that white paint with some of that light creamy tan color. Just going to mix that on my palette, and we're going to be making the tabletop for this painting. So at this time, you don't need to worry about lighting or where the shade is. You're just gonna make your design of your table. So I just drew out my table with my paintbrush and that white creamy paint, and then I will fill that all in. Once I have this filled in, then we will worry about the lighting and where the shadows are gonna be. So now that it's filled in, I'm gonna again wet my paintbrush, that same dirty water water, and I mixed up a little bit of a darker color. So when I mix a darker color, I just use the same first color that I was using to paint this table, and I add in a little bit of brown and maybe a touch of black to darken that up. And then I'm gonna do the front side of that table because there is definitely not gonna be a ton of light hitting that. And then in the corner on that bottom side, I did a little bit of darkness right here. Anywhere where that lighting that I painted is not going to be touching, I'm just going to darken that up a little bit, mixing brown and black paint. You don't want it to be too harsh or too dark, just slightly darker than the rest of the table. And don't worry if you get it too dark or you put too much paint down. Because this is wet acrylic, you can always go back in and fix anything. You really cannot mess this up. If it's too dark, just wet your paintbrush, get a little bit of that lighter color back on there, and blend it all in. When I was happy with the shadows and the lighting on the table, then I went back in with a little bit of a darker color. This is almost black, not completely, but I'm painting the front of that table. And then I'm going to mix my paint just a little bit darker because I want to add a leg onto this table. And of course, again, there's not going to be a ton of light getting to this leg. So I want it to be really dark, but you still want it to be noticeable off of the black canvas. And once you are happy with your table, now we can start going in and doing a little bit of details for this. I decided I wanted to do a wood table. So here I'm using that same dark color that I used on the table leg, and I drew some lines to make it look like wood, and I even put the little nail holes on the end of it. And then for color, I decided to just use a brown color for my wood table. Now again, I am keeping my paintbrush wet and going over that, so you're still going to be able to see those darker lines that I put on here because this paint is thinned down. And at this point, you can add in shadows and highlights on your table just by using a darker or lighter color. Then I let that completely dry. Now that my background is all completed, my table is complete, now is the fun part. I'm gonna draw my vase with some paint. So again, I mixed up that white paint with that creamy light tan color. These are the only colors I'm gonna still be using, all those same colors. The only color I added to my palette so far was a green color, which we will use to do the stems for the flowers. But first we have to paint our vase, and as you can see, I'm just using a smaller brush, doing a basic shape. I wanted to do a jug for my vase. You can do any jug you want to do, but I'm just doing a basic shape first. And once I'm happy with that shape, then I can go back in and fill in this jug. And you'll notice as I'm making this jug, I do keep changing the size and the shape of it, and that's completely fine because right now it's just the basic outline. You're just trying to figure out your shape and exactly how you want your vase or your jug to look. And again, once I was happy with it, then I just went back in with that same color, still not worrying about the shadows or the highlights just yet, just filling that all in with the color that I want my jug to be. And once it's filled in, still wet with the fill-in color, I'm gonna add a little bit of dark paint to that color, and then we're gonna start doing some shadows. So now while you're doing the shadows, you just want to pay attention to that background lighting, where you think the light would actually be hitting your jug and where you think it would be darker. Just go with the painting that you've already done, and it is so easy to tell where it should be dark and where it should be lighter. You want to go lightly with the dark colors to start with, and you can keep building those up into darker shadows. And just like before, I'm keeping my paintbrush wet and I'm blending in all of those dark colors. You'll also want to make sure you don't forget to do a shadow for your jug on the table. So you just want to make sure that you're using a dark color, not completely black, but mixing black and brown. And you're going to pull out that shadow and then rub it up onto your vase or your jug, and that's going to help blend this all in and make sure that your shadows and highlights are going to look the best. Again, you really cannot mess this up with this technique. The wet acrylic, you can keep blending until your heart is content with how it looks, but you can see I just keep going back and forth with the dark colors, lightening it a little bit if I think it's too dark, and making it darker if it's still not enough shadow that I think would fit into how the light is coming down from that quote-unquote window that I have in the background. Now, once I'm happy with my shadows, then I'm going to go into the highlights. So using kind of that same color that I used to fill in the jug, I'm just going to take that color and mix it a tiny bit darker to start doing the highlights and figuring out where the light would actually be hitting this jug. Again, you can keep blending this until you are completely happy with it, changing it from dark to light until you have your highlights and shadows the way you want them. It took me a little while. I just kept blending it until I was happy with it, making sure I am keeping my paintbrush wet. But you'll see me go back and forth with the light colors and the dark colors, and that's completely fine. You can just keep doing it, like I said, until you're happy with it. And once I was happy with it, I set it aside to let that jug dry completely. Now it was time to add in the flowers, and I am going to do the easiest flowers that there are. I actually have a lot of trouble painting flowers for some reason, but I'm starting off with some of that green paint that I had on the palette, and I'm just going to be pulling some little sprigs out of that jug with a small paintbrush. Again, once I have the basic shape of the greenery coming out of the jug, then I'll add in a few more little sprigs coming off of those. Then we're going to go in with a little bit of brown paint mixed with that green paint, and we're going to do some of the shadows on these little greenery pieces. Wherever it is darker on your canvas, that's where you're going to be putting this underneath the stems. The light would obviously just be hitting the top of those stems. And then we are going to take some white paint, and very easily, I have no idea what these flowers are called, but I do see them around. I believe they are a type of hydrangea, but these are the easiest flowers to make. You just go in and make little puffy dots to make these. Then once you have all your little puffy flowers made, you're going to go in with some darker paint, brown mixed with a little tiny bit of black, and you're going to do the shadows underneath these because obviously, again, the light would not be touching that. So just look at your painting and decide where the light is going to be touching and where it wouldn't be, and you just blend this right into those flowers. And the final step I'm doing here is just adding in some leaves to cradle my flowers. And that is it for this painting. It is really quick, really easy to do. Now I do know my table is a little bit crooked, but I'm still completely happy with how this turned out, and I hope you all enjoyed this too. I am definitely not an artist by any means, but this is so easy and so quick. I know everyone can do it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you next week.